Welcome to Narrative Drive Time. I am joined by Ali Hassan, stand-up comic extraordinaire, and we're going to talk a little bit today about hiding the broccoli. Hiding the broccoli is a phrase that's used occasionally in factual television, and what it means is you are going to hide information and ideas inside entertaining packaging, and that's what this guy right here, Ali Hassan, does all the time. You know him, you love him. He's the host of Laugh Out Loud on CBC Radio and the author of the forthcoming book, Is There Bacon in Heaven? And Other Pressing Questions for a Muslim. Ali, thank you so much for coming to Narrative Drive Time. Oh, and for the people at home, I'm Craig Colby. I'm a factual television producer and host of us and the owner of a storytelling company called Colby Vision. Ali, thank you for joining us today.
It's my pleasure, man. I feel like I'm on a country music radio station between the music and the shirt you're wearing and no intention of eating your vegetables. I just feel like we're in the heart of America here. Eat potatoes, like a real man.
Yes, well, you know, it was meant to be blues, but I'll take what I can get. It's probably white boy blues. Let's just start with the story you're telling now. You have a story that's resonating with audience. It's a big part of your act, and it is the theme of your book. What is the story you are telling now?
I mean, there are, multiple stories going at all times. It's like it's a bit of a storytelling machine that's happening. But the story I'm telling, or the story I've told, which makes the basis for my book, is the story of my show, Muslim Interrupted. And Muslim Interrupted was really about this idea that at our core as human beings, we have way more similarities than we have differences. And the differences exist for people who want to exploit them. And many have, and many continue to do that. And I think it's up to so many of us to remember that we have so much more in common than we do the differences that people would have divide us.
Boy, there are a lot of people these days working really hard on keeping us from believing that. Mm-hmm. How did you come to tell this story? What was the origin of that?
Well, I can credit my kids for that. I was struggling at home as what I call a cultural Muslim. Some people might say a failure of a Muslim. Others would say I'm doing just fine. But we don't practice. Or I should say, I don't practice the religion the way it's prescribed. And my kids were asking, are we Muslim? Yes, we are. Do we go to the mosque? No, we don't. You would have noticed if we go to the mosque. Why do you eat pepperoni? These kind of things. I was getting badgered quite a bit. And as a comedian, you joke about what you know. And I was going to open mic nights and I was trying out material. And some of it was that stuff from my own home. And I think because the so-called wound was fresh, it was resonating with people. And then I started enjoying what was happening there. And then I started adding other elements. For example, how I was in Sunday school for 10 years, which might be a record. It's an informal record, I'm sure. And how I got nothing out of it. And then people would come to me after the sets and say, like, I didn't know Muslims went to Sunday school. I'm Greek. I used to go to Saturday school, or I'm Croatian, or I'm Orthodox this, and we used to do Friday school, this and that. And right away, something clicked in those moments where I was like, you see that? We have more in common than what we think. And then I would start talking about, Muslims are supposed to pray 5 times a day. I thought that was common knowledge. A lot of people are like, wow, I didn't know that. 5 times. That's pretty intense. I thought my community was intense because we do this and this. And so I started just bringing in these elements of things, and I realized I have at least 20 minutes on my love of pepperoni alone. And then the other elements, I was like, I've probably got 40 minutes worth of stuff without really thinking about my past and my future and my sort of, journey through Islam, ins and outs and ups and downs with Islam, my faith, my identity. And I said, wow, I think I have a one-man show, a solo show on my hands here. And I certainly did, and I have a 90-minute show that I do that I've traveled across this country to 30 different cities. We've put it on a bunch of times. I took it to Edinburgh in a smaller form. And I knew once I was done in Edinburgh, I did 55-minute shows 28 nights in a row, basically. And after that, I started the show. But after Edinburgh, Trump was voted in. So this show has never really known a world without Trump. And so that became part of the book as well. And as you said, Craig, there are people who will, divide us and work very hard to do that. Trump was obviously one of those people. And I would have been remiss to be a Muslim on stage right after he's suggested that there should be a Muslim ban. We should document these people. We should track what they're doing. We should take a look at the mosques, all these kind of things that you've never heard a leader of a Western country say. Those things had an effect in my home and on my family. And so that became part of the show as well.
You've mentioned before that 9/11 was a turning point in your life.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like before and after that event for you?
Well, it's almost hard to remember pre 9/11 because it's been so many years in this after now. But I never got any trouble at the airport. That was never really a thing. I was never regarded as an enemy or somebody of suspicion. That was never really a thing. Or if it was just your everyday casual racism and not somebody viewed as a threat to security or global security. But 9/11, the night of 9/11, I was living in Chicago at the time, and I was working as an IT consultant. I had just been laid off the week before 9/11. And that night, the day was awful. We spent the day calling our friends in New York. As I've told many people, like I had my friends' emails. So it's my buddy Manny at Solomon Smith Barney or SSMB.com. Now, I don't know where SSMB is. Is it headquartered in the World Trade Center? I had no idea. So we're calling all our friends, and of course lines were down, and I guess by 6 or 7 p.m., everybody that we knew and we loved, thankfully, was accounted for. But it was an awful day. And so we went for a walk at night. I found buddies of mine who were, one's a Hindu guy, one's a Sikh guy, but the three of us went out. We wanted to just be sort of part of humanity after this inhumane experience was felt, this communal horrible experience was felt. We just wanted to go out. And of course, Chicago was dead. Everything is shuttered. No businesses are open. It's like a city in shock, not even in mourning yet, just in complete shock. And as we walked on this street, Division Street, which is sort of, it's the dividing street. Every city has that. The city of Toronto has the Yonge Street that divides. So it's a main busy street. And as we walked on Division Street, I see these two guys in sort of a nook of a doorway, and I just sort of nodded at them like, hey, it's a 9/11 nod. It's like a thing that doesn't exist. It's a crazy, like something horrific has happened, a global awful incident. You just give somebody a nod and you're like, what a day, your nod is very loaded. And yeah, he looked at me and he didn't sort of nod back or smile back or anything, which is fine. Chicago, very testosterone driven town, and who knows what he was going through also, right? But then as I walked a few feet past them, he said to his buddy, there go a couple of them right now. And that was the moment where I was like, oh, okay, so it's my Sikh friend, my Hindu friend, and myself, Muslim who's never broken a law, really. Maybe drank after hours in a park, but fairly innocuous stuff. And we are one of them. There go one of them right now. And then something about that moment, I was like, okay, this changes everything. And I didn't know what at the time, obviously, but then over the years, as policies came into being, I'm spending hours and hours in these secondary screening rooms in airports. And back then, 6 months later, again, hours. And I want the airport to be secure also. I want everybody's safety as well. That's paramount concern for me because that means I'll be safe as well. But I'm in these, secondary screening. I'm like, what? But I've done nothing since the last time you've had me here. So it just felt like, like intimidation tactics, shake-up tactics. It wasn't about common sense. It was about, you get these people, you put an X when their face comes up, right to the room, and then we figure out what to do with them. Every time, even if it's 19 times that they've come to this airport in the last 5 years, straight to the room. And then, there are all these like sort of random searches, and I'm getting pulled out of we're boarding the plane. We're at the gate. We're boarding the plane, and I'm getting called out. Sir, you just need to do a random search. So in your head, you're laughing. You're like, there's nothing random about this. But you can't laugh in front of customs officers. You can't get angry. Nobody wants to see a brown Muslim guy angry at an airport. So you just stand there and get patted down. And now all the people who were in the flight, even the ones who were not suspicious of you to begin with, now they're like, oh, do we have something to worry about with that guy who we're traveling with? So this was a very common thing that kept happening after 9/11. And, it sits with you, and it makes you feel like, okay, I'm not wanted here, and I'm a person of, suspicion and interest, or, not the good interest, the bad interest. So yeah, 9/11 definitely had an effect on myself and many, many people who look like me, and that's why I say that whether prior to 9/11, I would always, people would say, are you Muslim? And I'd be like, well, I'm kind of a Muslim. Are you Muslim? Well, depends, what day of the month you're asking me. Are you, that's some creative, dumb answer for it. But 9/11 was a realization that, whether you want to be a Muslim or not is irrelevant. You are a Muslim because you are what everybody perceives you to be. And it just reminded me of like all the times that I'd read about in history when some community, whether it be Jews, whether it be, in Africa, in Rwanda, whether it be in former Yugoslavia, it didn't matter if you were like, oh, I haven't been part of my own community for years. That doesn't matter. You are who we say you are, and you're a source of trouble because of it.
That's a hard idea for a lot of white people to relate to if you haven't experienced it. I've had one tiny experience with this, and I can't compare the breadth of it with yours. But when I was 8 years old, we moved to Canada from the United States. It was during the Vietnam War. And of course, we grew up pledging allegiance to the flag and being proud Americans. And I'm sure we weren't shy about that. Mm. But boy, the local kids threw rocks at our house and yelled, "Yankee, go home." And that stayed with me. I didn't have the problems that you had. I'm a white guy and can disappear unless you knew that you were supposed to dislike me or hate me. You wouldn't know. But for, my dad always thought that was an informative experience for a white person because it allowed you a chance to see what a world is like when people don't like you just for being who you are. Well, it changed the way I see things.
I know you're trying to be careful here, Craig, and saying that my experience doesn't match yours, but it is very illustrative that people just fear the other, whatever that other might be, as if 8-year-olds knew anything about Yankees and communism, and right, they don't. And
they got that at home. Around the dinner table, right? Yeah. That's where that came from.
Right.
But it changed the way I saw the world as an 8-year-old and made me aware of things. And I still should have been more aware growing up. With this new knowledge of the world as it is, how did that change you?
I think I probably went out of my way to make sure people don't feel like they have anything to worry about with me. And at some level, you resent that you have to do that. You're ordering a second beer in a plane. Like, I'll have another Heineken, all loud. And you're being louder than you need to. And you already have a buzz off your one Heineken. You really need the second Heineken. You know what you're doing, but you're doing it anyway. You resent that you're doing it. And that's just one, obviously, tiny example. But you try desperately to blend in and assimilate and just prove that, hey, I'm just like the rest of you. And you shouldn't have to do that. You shouldn't really have to do that, right? We should be in a place where we accept people because of the fact that we're all human beings, and that should be the end of it.
Yeah, it should be. I got into fights, but then again, I was 8 years old. How did that inform your work?
I mean, at the time, it didn't. I was a IT consultant. I was a bad IT consultant, and I remained a bad IT consultant. Nothing changed there. I wasn't good at my job, and nothing changed. But it did inform, once I got laid off, I was like, I half-heartedly applied for jobs a few months after 9/11. You couldn't, Ali Hassan wasn't getting a job right after 9/11. No one was, to be perfectly honest, but certainly my resume was going to the bottom of the trash bin, not even the bottom of the pile. That's not what they were looking for. Focus was on security more than anything. Mm-hmm. But after a few, half-hearted job attempts, I was like, I don't really want to be here. I don't really want to work here. And somebody told me straight up, I talk about this guy in my show, and I've forgotten his name, but I think it was Sunil. I was at a barbecue in November in Chicago, just freezing. You shouldn't be outdoors in November in Chicago, but we were on my friend's, a rooftop patio. We're all gathered around the barbecue for warmth while she grills up her soon to expire sausages or whatever reason she needed to have a barbecue. And, she was introducing everybody, and she says to somebody on one side of the barbecue, this is Sunil. He owns an IT company, and I'm unemployed, and I'm in IT, and he's got an IT sales company. It was like the exact words I needed to hear. I'm like, oh my God, IT sales. I don't want to sit at a computer and do IT programming. I want to do IT sales. This is what I want in life. And he's right there across from the barbecue. And I thought the heavens were parting. And I was like, this is serendipity that people talk about. And so I went to him and I gave him the elevator pitch on who I am. And I said, I was an IT consultant and it wasn't really my thing. And IT sales is what I want to do. And I, sort of want to use my personality to sell this thing, this knowledge I have. I want to use it in sales rather than in coding and programming. So he says, what did you say your name was? And I said, Ali Hassan. And he said, oh, yeah, I wouldn't hire you. So I thought he was joking. That's the Canadian sensibility in me. I was waiting for him to go, I'm just kidding. I'll see you next week. Come in by my office. But he was the most honest, You've experienced American honesty, I'm sure, Craig. He was an honest American who gave it to me straight. He goes, oh, look, I don't mean to offend you. I just you got to understand my clients. I got clients in Nebraska and Ohio and all over the Midwest of America. That's who my client base is. And they don't want to see an Ali Hassan. Certainly not now. I don't know when, but certainly not now. And so that guy really helped me, because I could have been angry at him, and I probably was for 24 hours or so, but I was like, oh, good for me, good for him giving it to me straight, rather than me deluding my own mind for the next few months thinking like, this will be fine. I can still stay in the US. I'll find something. I was like, okay, I'm not wanted here right now. And, why would I want to be part of a club that doesn't want me to be part of it anyway? What kind of weird colonized mentality is that? I got to get out of here. This doesn't make any sense. Let me go back to my place of birth and a country that I've always loved and see what I can make of myself. And so it was a good turning point. And that's when I got into food, and from food came comedy and this entire life that I've been able to create for myself. And
why do you think people were responding to your story and your act? Like you said, not everybody's Muslim, but people are responding to you talking about this now. Why do you think that is?
I think, to your earlier point, everybody has been othered at some level or the other. Even if you're in a martial arts class with another white guy and a white guy, your skills maybe were less than the person you're fighting against, and you were sort of othered that way. There's always a way to make somebody feel bad about themselves because of what they naturally bring to the table without any, without to no fault of their own. So I think there's probably that at work. People have felt othered in their life. I think many people just want to learn. They want to educate themselves. And unbelievable fact for me, I became, or my comedy became, not just entertaining, but also informative. I don't want to say educating; that's too strong, maybe, but that would assume some level of expertise that I have in Islam. But it was definitely informing people, and that was different from the first 5 years of comedy that I did, which was just sort of observing whatever that was going around me and glorified fart jokes. And now I'm like, oh, this is strange. People are telling me like I laughed a lot and I learned a lot, and I felt a real, I don't know, that was a real source of pride. I felt a real boost, and I said, I don't think I can get a better compliment than that. I really feel like I'm doing purposeful work without overblowing what I'm not winning Nobel Peace Prizes for my comedy, Craig. I mean, I'm well aware of that, but personally felt like I was doing purposeful work, and I had never done purposeful work. What I was doing in IT, I can't tell you, A, how bad I was, and B, how insignificant it was for my boss to tell me, oh yeah, the client who I'd never met in North Carolina, where I'd never been, really liked the app that we created for them. Who gives a shit? Like that doesn't help me sleep at night. That doesn't do anything for me. That doesn't make me any happier. In the moment I'd nod and be like, oh, good. So our work was for nothing. But plenty of times you would do the project, you would put some app together for a client, and then you say, did they like it? I'm not sure. We didn't hear back. So that's good. I mean, that doesn't do anything for me. Some people are motivated enough by money that, it doesn't matter. Those things, external doesn't matter, as long as they're getting paid every day and then they're having sort of fun with their money, they're, investing in it. I've never cared about money. And then, much to my wife's dismay and my parents' dismay, money has never motivated me. Money has never been the thing. If you told me you can make $200,000 this year by doing some accounting, it's like monkey work, I'd be like, honestly, I'll last 3 weeks and then I'll be out. I'll rationalize 1,000 reasons for why I don't really need that $200,000. And I definitely need that $200,000.
Yeah, we all do. I remember having a discussion with some of my fellow television producers on how much would they have to pay you to be a dentist. And, I am not making fun of dentists. I'm just saying I can't do it.
No,
it's just not in me. Yeah. So you found out that you were hiding broccoli, right?
That's right.
You went from fart jokes to all of a sudden your comedy Bruce Springsteen, making something entertaining with a real nugget of truth inside it that people can take away.
Yeah. I don't want to minimize depression, particularly not now. So I'm not going to say I was depressed because I was never diagnosed with that, but I used to get pretty sad. Let's say I used to get pretty bummed out. Didn't know what I wanted to do. The stuff I was doing, I didn't enjoy. And I was just like, is this life? Is this what I'm here for? Not to sound egotistical at all, but like most people, I thought more of myself. I thought that I had more to offer. And then you're sitting at a desk in Deerfield, Illinois, programming for some client you've never met. You're like, man, I'm making $65,000 a year, which at the time was unbelievable. It was like more than I'd ever seen. And I had zero happiness in my life. And in fact, I had sadness. And, a comment on how bad that work was that I got a job in a bar 2 nights a week underneath my apartment building. And I was more excited about that job that was paying me $7.50 an hour because I got to chat with people, and they're like, okay, he wants a steak sandwich. I go back in the kitchen and make steak sandwich. And then on the weekends, the guy would say, do you want to bounce at the bar? And we'd be like standing at the bar. There'd be girls dancing at the bar, and you just have to stand like this so that the girls don't fall. That was better for me. That felt more purposeful than anything I was doing in the consulting world. And that's actually when I realized money just isn't enough. Money's almost nothing. And it's an old, tired cliche, but man, do I believe it like I never believed anything. You do what you love and the money will come. And that's been my life. And thankfully the money has come. And I do a lot of stuff that I would probably do even if it didn't pay very well. Like I'm not a complete idiot. I wouldn't do some of this stuff for free because I have 4 mouths to feed at home, 5. I should count my wife. She also needs I have four little mouths to feed.
Mhm.
But yeah,
I can relate to that. I mean, I've managed to feed myself, but in COVID time, like I'm doing this for free just because I love the storytelling, right? And I love meeting people who do tell stories. Before we wrap, I do want to ask a little bit about process.
absolutely.
What's the process you go through when you are, first writing a joke and then building an act?
Process is an interesting subject because everybody has their own, and if anybody tells you this is how you got to do it, they're kind of lying to you, because there's no one way that works all the time for every person. You can read every Jerry Seinfeld book and listen to every Jerry Seinfeld interview and buy into his entire system that he developed for himself. But if you're at your core not that person who can sit down every day and just write, none of that makes any difference. And for many years, my writing process, quote unquote, was jokes came to me when I was doing the most mindless stuff, and I'd be like, oh wait, that might be something, and then I'd go write it down or take note of it in my phone. So lawn mowing, snow shoveling, vacuuming, scrubbing a tub, taking a shower, these were all times where my mind was void of any other stress or thoughts, just sort of mindless work. And that cleared my mind for like funny ideas to come. Not about the vacuuming, not about the tub, about just different things. I'd be like, wow, it happened again. Unbelievable.
Yeah, you open the door and visitors come in. So once you get that idea, what do you do with it?
Well, that's the thing. So sometimes ideas have come to me in a fully formed joke format, in the sense that I took my thoughts, I put them down on paper, I went on stage, it worked very well, and I was like, wow, I have an A joke, an A+ joke that I've just added to my set. That's more rare, but that has happened definitely. I know I can think of 3 of the jokes where that's happened. More often, it's an idea, it's a kernel of a thought, and what we do as performers, we let the audience decide. Sometimes we stubbornly stick to something and we go, no, the audience, you're wrong. This is funny.
It's so funny.
It's so funny. And finally, you're like, God, it's been 3 months. I keep humiliating myself. Nobody's getting it. They're right. They're the final arbiter. So I have to go back and rework this. This is just not working. And other times you don't have a fully formed idea at all. You just have a thought, and then you start building it and building it and building it. And then eventually, and sometimes these things take like 2 years. I have some jokes where I do them and they're B minus, but they're like filler. They're like, you know what those jokes are? Those are if I'm hosting a show and one comedian has done phenomenally well and is a super high energy comic, and the next person on the show is kind of low energy and does well half the time, you cleanse the palate with one of your B minus jokes. That's the one, right? And then somehow it's happened where somebody says something in the audience, sort of like a gentle heckle, and then you say something and it gets a big laugh. And then you say, oh, maybe that'll be my joke now. So you start telling the joke and you say, last night I told this joke and somebody from the audience said this, I told them this, now there's a big pop. You're like, oh, that will just move to a B+ joke. And in 2 years of it just lying in like a mediocrity, and some weird thing happened, somebody from the audience, some friend of yours said something, and you just go, oh, that's the thing that was missing. So when you ask about process, mine personally is all over the place. Some ideas come, fully formed, and others take years until they are something worth working with. But one piece of advice I got, actually, it wasn't advice. I took it as advice, but I asked Colin Mockery once. I was chatting with him, and we were doing an interview on a CBC show, and I said to Colin Mockery, "How do you prepare for improv? You're going out there and you're doing whose line is it anyway? What do you do backstage to prepare?" And he goes, "Eat a sandwich." I said, no, I don't mean physically prepare. How do you prepare your stomach to not be hungry on stage? I mean, how do you prepare? And he said, no, that's the question I'm answering. I eat a sandwich. I was like, how does that help you prepare? He goes, because I cleanse my mind of any stress or tension or thoughts, and I do the most banal thing possible, and I eat a sandwich. And I was like, oh my God, that's my vacuuming thing. It's the clearing of the mind. That's actually somebody's process. That's something they do. So
I was backstage with Colin Mockery, and he actually told me something different. He stands up. He stands up all the time before he goes on, so that he brings at least the energy up. So he's got a couple things going on. I think he knows what he's doing.
Well, he's standing up while he's eating that sandwich. He was telling me,
sure
I go to the sandwich table and pick a sandwich. That's still the standing is still at work there.
So from the pre-interview and the process, it sounds like you get an idea, you make a note, you test it, and then you write out the full joke.
I generally write it out. And the reason I do that is because my memory and my retention, not great. So writing it, seeing it helps me. Sometimes writing it ruins things, to be perfectly honest. Sometimes writing it all out because it's so great in your mind. And then in the transference, as you typed it out or as you wrote it out, you're like, what happened? Something didn't work. So sometimes the best thing, if it's really in there, is to get on stage that very night, get it out. And I have found recording it using my phone recorder is the most ideal method for me personally. And sometimes that writing ruins things. It really depends on the joke and what level of maybe acting out that I have to do and how involved the joke is. But then once it's recorded, then I can start documenting it. So either I go straight from my brain to the stage, or if there's no stage available that night, if I'm not going to be performing that night, like the reality of COVID has been, then you're just writing, you're just filling voice memos, or you're filling, your books with ideas, and you're just sitting on them and being like, can't wait to perform these and get these out, and maybe be humiliated in the process, but you have to be open to that too.
Well, that's the bravery of the stand-up comic. And that process you have is something that I've taught people when I coach writing. When you're really stuck, say it out loud and then write it down, and then you can clean it up a little bit. Mm-hmm. Listen, I promised people the hidden broccoli in all of this. And I think you've said it. Not to put words in your mouth, but a great way to get a message across is to put some humor around it.
Well, I came across that realization sort of by accident, to be honest. But now that I've come across it, I am fully aware of the, not to be, to glamorize this world of comedy. Somebody might go to a comedy show after I say this and be like, that guy just talked about his penis for 40 minutes. This is supposed to be some great thing. But comedy does have the ability to do a couple of wonderful things. And number one, that I've learned in my life, number one is that it can bring joy to people who desperately need it. And I think if you're in Canada and you're performing, if you're in America, every comedian has had somebody come up to them after the show to tell you that they were going through a really tough time. They continue to go through a tough time, but they really needed a laugh and they got it. And that makes you feel great, right? And you can do something for somebody. And I remember when I was in the Middle East, we were at the Amman Comedy Festival, and the mayor of Amman told us, I want to thank you all for being here and bringing joy to a region that desperately needs it. That was in 2008 and in 2009. And that was a big realization for me, that while you're like, oh, my joke, and that guy went over he went 30 seconds over and I didn't get to do this joke. Sometimes it's bigger than that, much bigger than that. You don't have to worry about the small stuff. And other times, the other message is that comedy has the power to deliver serious messages and change your way of thinking in a way that a lot of other people can't. It's not a TED Talk at the end of the day, although TED Talks can have comedy in them. And it's not a presentation. It's something that can really deliver a message in a nice way. You think of how many comedians have made a joke. I think of Chris Rock and Bill Burr in particular, who have reframed something, and now I can't look at that thing without thinking of the joke, and I see things differently because of the comedy. and also sometimes just a message about, at the end of the day, we have similarities that we should focus on and not focus on the negative and the differences, which is what I've been able to do with my show. And that is something that I wouldn't have been able to do without comedy.
Well, that's a great place to stop it, because that is a wonderful message that's really needed now. Ali, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and experiences with us. You are not just a stand-up comic, you are a stand-up guy.
I'll drink to that. Thank you very much, Craig. So are you. I appreciated you having me on.
Excellent. And that is Narrative Drive Time. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Are you a storyteller who wants to tell the story of how you tell stories? Yes? Then I want to hear from you. Drop me a line at craig@colbyvision.net and tell me a little bit about yourself, your career, and some of the particulars of your process. Colby Vision is a storytelling company working in the broadcasting and the business world. Send me an email if you need help with either. Thanks to Tim Vesely for the music, and Kevin Francisco for the graphics, and Dave White for the editing. And thanks to you for watching Narrative Drive Time.